Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Chike Ogea, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Professor Bola Akintenrewa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Now, Yemi, good to have you here today.
Good to be back.
Now, let's start with the decision of the Supreme Court in the Atiku Abubakar case. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, reached a political dead end on Wednesday as the Supreme Court dismissed his appeal against President Muhammadu Buhari's election for lacking merit. Atiku has been challenging the election victory of President Muhammadu Buhari, who won a second term in office on February 23, 2019, and had earlier lost his case at the Election Petitions Tribunal. A 7-man panel of the court, headed by Justice Tanko Ibrahim Muhammad, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, also dismissed the appeal filed by Atiku Abubakar, challenging the victory of Buhari at the presidential election. The panel said there is no merit in the appeal, and Chief Justice Tanko Muhammad said the reasons for their judgment will be given later. Now, this is the latest development with this matter, the presidential election petition filed by Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and the People's Democratic Party. And this has generated a lot of concern among Nigerians. One, why did the Supreme Court dismiss the case so hastily, so briskly, so peremptorily, if you may say so? And what reasons would the Supreme Court give? And when would those reasons be presented before Nigeria? But as you know, the Supreme Court is a policy court. It's also the apex court. Once it has spoken, that is the end of the matter, technically. But Chike, let me start with you.
Yeah, right, because I'm supposed to be the lawyer, right? Well, yeah, it's...
The Supreme Court overturned itself. It has.
Yeah, before...
the Supreme Court can reverse itself. That's why it's a policy court.
Yes. Under what term? Sorry, I just was curious.
Very extraordinary circumstances, and that's a different ballgame. But for what we have at hand, I think it was Justice Chukwudifu Oputa in the case of Adegoke Motors, I think, I've forgotten the year, that said the Supreme Court is not final because it is infallible. That it is actually infallible because it is final. In other words, they could make mistakes. They are human beings like me and you, but there's absolutely nothing we're going to do about it because that is the end of the road. And then the other things a lot of lawyers or are asking that why the haste, like you said. Some people think it's some form of indecent haste. They didn't even sit down to listen to the appeal. Has that ever happened? And all of that. The truth is that it's also the practice of the court, because in the last maybe 3-4 weeks, they must have had that brief. And all those judges, it's just that, and there's no compulsion for them to let us know the panel that is going to sit on it. You see, these are all things that are within their rules. Just the way the Chief Justice came out on that day and said to you, these are the panelists, And if within that time frame they have looked at the case, it's just like the kind of thing we do in criminal trials where you say a no-case submission.
They claim to have looked at the case.
Yeah, I don't know whether they claim. They just said the Chief Justice of Nigeria and the Supreme Court has indicated that and that is the premise on which they have dismissed the appeal, because they said, how would they ever dismiss an appeal without going through it? For justices of that level, that's not possible. But now, like you rightly said, and then of course, again, is the tradition of the court to also give a time when it will give its reasons, or the ratio...
That's covered under Section 285.
Exactly.
Of the 1999 Constitution.
Or what we call the ratio decidendi. So we'll wait for that. That, I think, is where the real critical point is. Though we all know that there's nothing, appeal now is to God. But the point is that let us even listen to the reasons, subject it to all the scrutiny and common sense and whatever we can, and then we'll be able to understand whether justice has really been served. But as it is today, like you said, we have come to the final bus stop, the end of the road. And I think it is just important that both parties, just accept it in good faith. The winners should be gallant in victory, yes, and let's all come together and push this country forward. Nobody should be, I've seen one or two officials of the APC making some statements and trying to gloat and all that. I don't think that is necessary now. At the same time, my party, the PDP, I would say, look, we've come to the end of the road. And
what does it say,
yes.
Yemi, about the image of the Supreme Court? Now, there's this principle that, justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done.
That's right.
And I read a document, purportedly a statement issued by Professor Ben Nwabwe, which is in circulation, where he raised the fundamental question of fair hearing. It is most unusual for the Supreme Court to refer to a we, 2 weeks ago that looked at the briefs and the exhibits, a we that is unknown, to the Nigerian populace, at least as at that time, and then not to even provide an opportunity for counsel on both sides, to make their formal submissions. And then in any case, the inordinate haste with which the Supreme Court just dismissed the matter, given its importance, and this will be quite unprecedented because in the past, the Supreme Court will spend quite some time, to look at the matter on its own merit before arriving at, a public pronouncement. So these are some of the issues that have been raised. But what do you think?
I think they are valid. Professor, I haven't read the piece, but Professor Nwabwe is quite respected as a lawyer and an authority on our Constitution.
Constitutional lawyer.
Exactly. But I guess from a citizen's perspective, what I would say is that I'm not quite sure that in the drama that has sort of besieged the judiciary over the last 2-3 years, maybe, that the Supreme Court, I'm not sure particularly cares, I would say, around how Nigerians view it. Because in being the apex institution, I believe they also set the tone for how the country sees the judiciary as a body. And I think from the way Onogen was treated to the way Tanko became Supreme Court judge, the Chief Justice of the country, to the nominees from the appeal court that are being nominated to join the Supreme Court. The whole process raises a lot of questions around, is the judiciary really an independent body? There are a lot of people who don't believe they are. And if we take sort of premise that and say that they are not an independent body as they should be, then their decisions shouldn't really be surprising. But as Chike said, I think it will be very interesting to see what their reasons are and how soon those reasons come to fore. And you tie that also within, for me, and I think it's really very important to look at within the review and the entire review of our elections. So we have elections. Until today, INEC, our election management body, has failed to provide results for that election. So we have a declared winner, but you cannot go on INEC's website and know how did the results pan out, who won, the voting pattern, thank you, per polling unit, per ward, per local government. My organization has written to INEC twice, and we're now taking INEC to court under the Freedom of Information Act. So if you have your election management body who is not making clear who has won the election, then you have your Supreme Court, to your point, dismissing an appeal. Regardless of what, yes, there's a problem. We say jokingly that APC and PDP are 6 and half a dozen. But really, in the scheme of this, the institutions do matter. And when the institutions choose not to honor what they stand for, then there are concerns.
Well, Prof, some other issues that have been raised by some persons, one, that perhaps the Supreme Court had to do it quickly because of time constraint. But I don't think that is proven. An appeal, has to be considered within 60 days. And if, Atiku and PDP went to the Supreme Court on September 23, then, the Supreme Court still has a little time, even if it is just by way of managing perception, to allow some little arguments and still arrive at the same position. Some people say, well, maybe they had to handle it this way in order to modulate public temperature, because, everybody was looking forward to that judgment. And who knows, maybe if they had allowed it to drag out, some people could resort to self-help, take the law into their hands. But the way they have done it now, they've already delivered the judgment. Everybody is waiting for the reasons. By the time the reasons are, provided, people will have settled down to the new reality. Do you think that, this is a case of the Supreme Court trying to help ensure stability within the system?
I cannot agree more. The judges are less learned than being political strategists. That's what has actually happened. And most Nigerians, I would say, even without any scientific inquiry, do not expect any other ruling, any judgment different from what they have given. Why? It is not known in history, legal history, where a judge who is required to adjudicate a case will suddenly become, the advocate of one of the parties in the case. This is not a hearsay. I had the opportunity to witness, to see when the judgment was given in the lower court, where one of the judges, after the lead judgment was given, was now trying to explain why we should give credibility to the submission to the witness of a very old Nigerian, reportedly a classmate of President Muhammadu Buhari, that if an old person could now come to give justification to say that Buhari was learned or he had a school cert, no, that shouldn't have been the functional responsibility of any judge. Your own is to hear the case and then apply, the law. But now, Supreme Court now coming to tell us that there's no merit in the case and the case is dismissed. It's expected. But second point, even if there is a regulation that enables, that permits the court to defer, the time of reasons, I would have expected that a Supreme Court that knows quite well the environmental sentiments, all right, who have tried to give reasons, the way they did when ruling in the lower court, trying to justify every statement. Now this time, to just come up with another dimension of a technical argument rule out is most unacceptable. I don't share the view of my brother Shike that, look, one should just take it like that. No, it is not good in any normal setting to always seek all right, to condone what is not good.
You see the allegation Prof has just made is that he has accused the judges of descending into the arena.
We have to go on break now. It's time now for a break.
That is
just hold your thoughts. We'll come back. It's time now for a break here on Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Chike Ogea, former Commissioner of Information Delta State, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, and Professor Bola Akinterewa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Now, before we went on break, we were discussing the Supreme Court decision in the Atiku case, as it is likely to be known hereafter. And you were going to respond to Prof.
No, I wasn't even going to respond. I just wanted to get some parameters straight, that it is weighty to accuse those judges of that level of descending into the arena. Though, like you said, it is a perception. And you see, it hasn't been a good time for the judiciary, even though I'm a lawyer. I would say that. Like, I think it was Yemi that laid that foundation, that the whole evolving of the judiciary over how Onoge was taken out, how the new CJ was brought in, and all that went on, obviously showed a situation where the system was trying to work to the answer. But then, is it the judiciary we should blame? You see, that if they have come in so heavy-handed on them from the executive, because these are people who have decided that come rain or sunshine, this is the end result, this is what must happen, this is also why our elections were so murky, even after now, this is why the electoral bill was not signed, so there are a plethora of issues of why we are where we are.
What we say also, and this has to do with the issue of perception, that the Judas must be above board like Caesar's wife, whatever may be the circumstances. Well, what we have said so far is that we have expressed concerns about perception issues, also about the approach. But we also agree that the Supreme Court, being the policy court, the court of last resort, and the apex court,
that enough is enough.
That is the position. What you have said is the position of the law in this matter as it is. And the PDP has taken the matter to God. The PDP chairman says everything is now in the hands of God. Of course, Atiku Abubakar more or less rejected the ruling, but of course he's helpless.
The lesson for humanity,
we have to look forward to the future.
The lesson for humanity is to note that, look, the mere fact that you go to court doesn't mean you will have justice.
Anyway, let's leave that for now. There will still be a lot of time or opportunity also to discuss this Supreme Court decision. Let's go to the United Kingdom, where there is also a very interesting development, where Boris Johnson's winter gamble to end Britain's Brexit stasis has sent a chill through many MPs in his Conservative Party. The Prime Minister, in office for a little over 3 months, is taking everything on a December 12th election, which will take place against the backdrop of a bitterly divided country, extreme voter volatility, and a traditional two-party system being torn apart by Brexit. Mr. Johnson's own team admits that they have no idea how Britain's first December election in almost 100 years and his most momentous election in a generation will turn out. But there is widespread agreement that the outcome will profoundly shape the future of the country. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson earlier criticized President Donald Trump's position on Brexit after the American leader said the current deal will make it difficult to trade. He told Sky News broadcaster it was a matter of regret that he was not able to take the United Kingdom out of the European Union by the 31st of October, as he had promised. He, however, defended his deal with Brussels, arguing President Trump was wrong on what trade deals Britain will be able to do with other countries. There are many sides to this. It's right. First winter election since 1923. And the other parties are, already expressing concern about some of the issues. What I've seen is how already, the campaigns have started and they are issues driven. Brexit, of course, is on the table. NHS, issues of climate change, issues of taxation and all of that. But it will be interesting to see how all of that, plays out as the United Kingdom prepares for a do or die, make or break election on which the various parties are taking very clear positions. Yes, Prof, let me start with you.
Boris Johnson may end up winning. Why? Because after having been defeated many times in the parliament, his last option, his last card, his joker, is to go for elections in the belief that at the end of the day, the people may want to see more clearly what is struggling for. The first point is that you can see that those who were against Boris Johnson are now already agreeing with the idea of holding election, to which they were opposed initially. Now, this election, as rightly pointed out or foreseen by Boris Johnson and his political supporters, that they wouldn't know what the strategic scenarios will be in December. True, nobody can predict that for now. But the truth remains that alliances, all right, are being reviewed. We are likely to have a situation whereby Boris Johnson will be in a better position to explain the gray areas of Brexit. Generally speaking, nobody is against Brexit. We need to underscore that. Majority of the British people are in favor. Majority.
Really?
Yes. The only thing is Brexit with or without deal that is creating the problem, especially with the Scottish.
With or without deal, what kind of deal?
Well, what kind of deal is a function of what the European Union itself will be prepared to take. Northern Ireland, the Scottish, they have their own specific interests. All right, they do not want to opt out of the European Union, especially.
That's the position of Nicola Sturgeon.
Precisely.
And the SNP.
Yes.
So now, their agreement 300 years ago, in terms of their United Kingdom agreement, you cannot set that one aside. But the point on which we should lay emphasis is that on the basis of the 2016 election, majority will want Brexit. Now, the parliament giving the impression now that there is a situational change is yet to be seen until December 12th when the election takes place.
Anyway, what do you think, Yemi, particularly of President Trump's interference? I mean, he was on radio and he was saying that, you know, the British should vote for Boris Johnson because he's a very good man, he's a fantastic man, and that nobody should vote for Jeremy Corbyn because he will take the United Kingdom to bad places. And he even called on Nigel Farage of the Brexit party to join hands with Boris Johnson. And he told him, you know, Boris Johnson likes you a lot. So, what do you think?
I mean, just to say that, Prof using the 2016 election, given the numbers to say that most of Brits want Brexit, not so sure about that. Because, I mean, based on just the numbers of people that participated in that vote. But I watched an interesting video with Tony Blair earlier in the week where he made the case for why leaving the European Union doesn't make any sense, given sort of the global dynamics. That Britain is in a stronger place within the EU to negotiate as a body, rather than as a small country compared to the US, Germany, and the EU as itself on its own. But to your point, I mean, just as an aside around Trump, I mean, there's nothing surprising around his comments. It's the same Trump that said he had a perfect conversation with the president of Ukraine. So his exaggerated phrases are nothing new.
Have become characteristic.
Quite. Not have become our character. It's always been like that, quite bombastic.
In any case, Downing Street issued a statement almost immediately on the issue of trade to say that, if anything, you know, Brexit will provide the United Kingdom an opportunity to have trade deals with any country, including the United States.
But how, I mean, the Tony Blair's point is that as a tiny country, you can have with, you will then have to trade with every country in the world on your own terms.
On that WTO
exactly.
rules.
But
Chike, what do you think of what's going on in the UK?
Because you see, that trade issue was because the British generally are skeptical. They feel, you know, this liaison between Trump and Boris, they are not very comfortable with. And like Yemi rightfully said, you know, based on the sentiments of 2016, there's been a lot of shifting sands since then. That's what a lot of people don't understand. A new generation are more aware because of the conundrum that they have seen in this thing.
In fact, the first day of voter registration,
yes,
over 300,000 young persons in the United Kingdom
showed up.
Showed up, registered.
So I'm telling
and they could be a great force.
We are looking at a different dynamics. Yeah. That dynamics of those old conservative people in far-flung places, London didn't even take that seriously then, the Brexit thing. I remember I was around London, you didn't even know anything was going on. It was these far-flung people that felt that, oh, all these people from Eastern Europe, they are taking our jobs, blah, blah. So those were the sentiments. They didn't look at the details of what Brexit had to offer the United Kingdom. And looking at it now, I can assure you, you know, even though it's a better way for Boris Johnson to go with the elections, but I don't think there's anything guaranteed about him winning those elections.
Yeah,
I don't think so at all.
There's a lot of uncertainty ahead.
Yes.
I bet
on
it to
both
be
sides.
Yes, on all fronts. In fact, you know, the Conservatives are leading in the polls with about 10%.
Yes.
And that's about half what the situation was with Theresa May.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
there is no guarantee how
37,
the thing will
20,
shape
whatever.
out.
Yes, exactly.
But of course, I think the Conservatives are saying they are not forming any alliances or coalitions. But they are likely to get the support of Nigel Farage and his group, who may not put up candidates in places where the Conservatives are very, very strong.
Yes.
You know, although Nigel Farage himself says the Brexit deal that Boris Johnson has worked at is just a deal in name only, you know, and it's not something that anybody can do.
There's still a lot of surprises coming up there, I assure you.
It's a full month away. So
Yes.
Anyway, well, what do you think of John Beko, the speaker, who after 10 years had kept to his promise that he will step down if there is an early election?
Yes.
You know John Beko, of course. The man that says, order, order.
you know, their system is so different because the kind of speaker he is even more like a civil servant kind of situation. You know, it's not like the political thing here. He is the glue that holds the, totally almost, beyond partisanship. You know, he just tries to moderate, the parliament.
And for him,
that's
he
right.
finds great engagement in retirement. Yes. We'll take another short break here on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. Don't go away. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Chike Ogea, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Professor Bola Akintenrewa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Now, let's come back to Nigeria and take on another issue that has been quite controversial. The Nigerian Army has called for a total disregard of the publication in circulation on the social media of a purported nationwide exercise codenamed Operation Positive Identification. The operation will require Nigerians to show proof of their citizenship to soldiers who will be deployed across the states for the reported operation. Acting Director, Army Public Relations, Colonel Sagi Musa, said the report emanated from a fictitious group, BRICS Company, which he said does not have anything to do with the Army. He said its Operation Positive Identification had no such abbreviation as OPI. He recalled that in order to complement the ongoing operation in the Northeast, the Army had an ongoing Operation Positive Identification, which is intelligence-driven, deliberate, and targeted operation. Now, this is a bit confusing. This matter has been in the public domain for more than a week. The Senate addressed it. The House of Reps concurred. Both chambers of the National Assembly called on President Buhari to stop this Operation Positive Identification. Femi Falana, SAN, also went to court, arguing that this is a violation of Section 35 of the 1999 Constitution and Article 6 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, right? The NBA, the Nigerian Bar Association, also kicked. All kinds of NGOs also complained. Now it has taken the Nigerian Army more than a week to now come forward to say, well, we have a Operation Positive Identification, but there is a company called Brinks Company that has been explaining Operation Positive Identification. Ours is intelligence-driven, is targeted at bandits, We don't know this fictitious. Okay, if indeed this was the situation, why didn't they come out so early to clarify their position? But the bigger issue is that Nigerians are saying that the military should not be involved in internal security operations in a manner that amounts to an erosion of the mandate of the police and immigration. Yemi, let me start with you.
I mean, the Nigerian army, as with the General Buhari administration, has just been hopeless with communication. As far back as September, there was a tweet by the Nigerian army saying that the operation was valid. And as you said, this thing is circulated over, it then takes a week for them to just put on Twitter, beware, with fake written across it. And then they come back with an explanation that that still says it's going to go ahead because it's not what you think, we're actually doing it. So their messaging is, it's not really what you think, but we're actually doing it. And we're saying that, okay, what exactly are you doing?
That's right.
What are the terms of it? And because...
What are the rules of engagement?
What are the, thank you, rules of engagement. Because, and that is the premise that Nigerians are coming from, both the police and the army have a track record of abuse, have a track record of abuse of their powers, have a track record of abuse of human rights. And so when there is confusion and lack of clarity around what exactly is being done, the citizens themselves don't know their rights, then it is a problem. Now, this is at the back of the case we've had, I think, 3 weeks ago, of police officers and young men carrying laptops under the guise of stopping 419 fraudsters. So the police is being taken up on that because you just stop people randomly, supposedly on the guise of identification, but then you just take them to an ATM to get them to give you money. Now you're giving the military powers to do literally exactly the same thing. And who am I? Okay, so when the military stop me and ask, based on what I'm wearing, which is one of the things in that thing, and shake me down, who do I report to? I mean, so in knowing that there's been miscommunication, the army, at the very least, has an order of duty to say, look, yes, there's been a lot of communication. If any of our officers stop you for whatever reason, call this number, speak to this person. Then we'll know that they're clear, that there is an issue. But of course, that's not the case. And I'm just to end, I'm quite glad that Mr. Falana has taken it up and is suing them.
Yes, he's taking them to Lagos High Court.
Yeah.
Yes, Chike, what do you think?
Yemi has basically said, you know, what the situation is. The military has to be up and doing with their communications. Yes, it is true we have this terrible issue of our security in the country, because what they were trying to premise this on was that a lot of maybe even Boko Haram fighters have found their ways to the south. And yes, it's going to be intelligence driven, and it's not going to be open harassment on the way, on the roads, and maybe, who knows, they might even go knocking on people's houses or something, you know. But the truth is that there are better ways of doing this thing. We are not in a 16th century jungle in Nigeria. You know, we need to get real, and the military is a last resort. The military should only engage with our external aggressors. They have no business in a civil polity at all. I think that should be reinforced for all to understand. That's why we have the police, like you said, we have the immigration, if there are issues of identity and all of that. Because whether we like it or not, the terms of who a Nigerian is clear. How we derive our citizenship in Nigeria, by birth, by naturalization, everything is clear.
Well,
so I don't understand.
Positive identification. Do we even have a proper identification system in Nigeria? Do we even know who is a Nigerian and who is not a Nigerian? And how do you differentiate between a bandit and you know, someone else who is not a bandit?
We all carry ID.
At the level of banditry, I agree with you. That's where the issue is. I hold a different opinion. When there is a serious problem of insecurity, national emergency, if the government is telling us that some Boko Haramis have escaped, all right, and they are pursuing them, that argument can look a bit logical, and one can support them. I wouldn't mind a situation whereby you pursue those terrorists, all right? Whether pursuing the terrorists by the policemen or by the military, wouldn't matter because the policemen do not have, means of war the way the soldiers would. I will consider that one to the military. But the main problem is that government is honestly dishonest. What I mean by that is this. You can see it from the statement of their public relations officer. The contradiction in his statement. On the one hand, he's saying that our own type of OPI is different from that of the BRICS company.
Yes.
You are describing the BRICS company as faceless, etc. Fictitious. Yet you are describing, you are giving it, you are giving information on what you say is fictitious and you don't know about. And you also come out to say that, look, our own OPI is intelligence-driven, etc. So, look, please, if the government of Nigeria doesn't know where it is going to, it must also know where it is coming from. That's the
so-called BRICS company. Why has it not been tracked down?
Exactly.
Why are the people behind it, not arrested? Since they say, their own operation is intelligence-driven, why don't they start by demonstrating that intelligence by tracking down whoever they claim is misrepresenting them? That's Nigeria for you.
Yes.
Anyway, let's take another topic. U.S. President Donald Trump says the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, had become unhinged amidst a feud over the impeachment inquiry's possible evidence. A bitterly divided House of Representatives voted Thursday to endorse the Democratic-led impeachment inquiry into President Trump's activities in a historic action that set up a critical new public face of the investigation and underscored the political polarization that serves as its backdrop. The vote was 232 to 196 to approve a resolution that sets out rules for an impeachment process for which there are few precedents, and which promises to consume the country a little more than a year before the 2020 elections. It was only the third time in modern history that the House had taken a vote on an impeachment inquiry on a sitting president.
Is this the American Trumpzit? Maybe their own version of Brexit.
Well, of course, that Trump, they may not succeed in removing Trump from office, given the fact that the Senate is dominated by Republicans. You will need up to 20 Republicans to join the Democrats. And the Republicans have clear majority of 53, in that Senate.
That's the confidence he's
even if he's impeached
him,
in the House, he cannot be impeached at the Senate. Seeing the pattern of voting, I mean, in the House of Representatives, the vote on the impeachment inquiry rules, was 0 on the side of the Republicans. No Republican went against it.
No doubt about it. The Republicans, I think, are standing solidly with him. But you know the word impeachment in America is not the way
it's not removal.
It's not removal here. They're just laying indictment, laying the foundation for what they say these are the infractions he has done over time. Now, Trump, we all know, has been unhinged for a long time. Though he's
throwing it back at him.
He's talking about Pelosi being unhinged. I think he's the one that's unhinged. And the truth is that, that's why I likened it that is this America's own Brexit, because we are going to see another conundrum. It's going to be dragged. It's, like you rightly said, nobody can predict where this is going to end as well. I can assure you.
Prof, quickly.
But you see, removal is not necessarily the ultimate objective of those who are engaging in impeachment process. But it will be on record. You see, the truth will remain. All right, even if it's not removed. But that will go a very long way when it comes to voting. The Republican in the Senate constitutes one, constituency. But the overall constituency, the National Assembly, will have seen that this man, this Donald Trump, all right, is a major problem, it's a challenge in
democracy.
Precisely.
American democracy, yes.
That's the issue.
Well, Yemi, quickly, before we go
what I'd
on
like
break.
to see is that for areas where the senators won by slim margins, that the Democrats in those constituencies rally around and put pressure on their representative. Because yes, they're Republicans, but they represent a constituency. So you might be a Republican, but you represent me.
They
So
vote
if
individually.
So if they can put pressure on the Republican that's representing them, that look, yes, but don't vote along party lines. This is what we believe, and these are the reasons why we want you to support this move. I think that will be a very fascinating mobilization to see if anybody actually heads it.
Well, we'll see what happens. You know, even if the impeachment goes through at the House of Representatives, would they be able to get the magic number of 67 in the Senate? I don't think that will happen, but we'll see. You know, we'll see.
If they mobilize well, they can.
Well, maybe. Well, let's take another short break here on Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be taking on other subjects. Don't go away. Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me here in the studio, I have Chike Ogea, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, and Professor Bola Akinterewa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Now let's come back to Nigeria, where the federal government has made good its threat to stop the salaries of all its workers, especially members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, who are not featured on the Integrated Payroll and Personnel Information System, IPPIS. Government officials say this is in compliance with President Buhari's directive on the stoppage of the salary of any federal government employee who is not captured on the IPPIS platform by the end of October. Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed earlier this week said government will be discussing with ASUU whether the instruction is from the president. On Thursday, ASUU suspended its planned strike, and its president, Professor Biodun Ogunyemi, said the union is working on an alternative pay system for its members that will be university-based and easily monitored by governing councils. Well, Yemi, I mean, you are a campus raised, you know, but I mean, ASUU's big argument is that, you know, IPPIS violates university autonomy. I don't know what they mean by that, but I don't know what you think.
I mean, like, growing up, I heard my father fight this fight, pretty much the bigger part of my childhood. The fact that universities should be autonomous enough to set their own fees. I'm sorry, University of Ibadan and Taraba State University are not the same. And I say that because of their history. University Ibadan was on par with University College London when it was founded. Taraba State University was founded many years later, has different dynamics, has different structures. So the fact that Abuja wants to control, which is partly ASUU's point, wants to control everything centrally in terms of payment, I agree with them to the degree, but it's not just about payment, it's also based on your structure. ASUU has consistently fought being standing alone. Don't collect money from the federal government. Let the federal government provide bursaries. Let the federal government provide a loan structure. Let the federal government provide grants for research. But let each university raise its own money. That's why you will teach at the federal university, complain about how much you're getting, constantly go on strike for poor benefits, but then go to every private university based on that, or state university based on your credentials there, to teach and make more money. Yeah. Covenant and Babcock and our other private universities are able to charge what they charge because of the quality that they provide. That's how they're able to pay. So I think ASUU is being smart by half in saying that they want to be autonomous when it comes to a centralized database of paying their salaries. But when we say, you know what, oh yeah, be autonomous and run your universities your way so you can charge fees to the degree of the excellence that you want. So when I'm applying for universities, we can have different levels. If IFE wants to be at the level of Harvard, IFE can position itself at that level. And any other university that doesn't want, then students will begin to vote, which is why, I mean, we don't have enough spaces, we don't have enough universities, but students can pay. And it's not an issue that you would shortchange those who can't pay. That's the whole idea of bursaries and loans, and that's where the federal government can come in.
Well, you know, this whole issue of autonomy is covered in the Universities Miscellaneous Provisions Amendment Act of 2003, you know, and that's to give, you know, ASUU power over the conduct of their own affairs, right? Yeah. But nobody is talking about financial autonomy.
Exactly.
There is autonomy in Harvard, but Harvard has financial autonomy. They raise funds. What the federal government is saying is that if you are paid from the consolidated revenue account, right?
consolidated from the center.
From the center.
Exactly.
So this is the issue. So ASUU is absolutely wrong.
Well,
And that's also why when they consistently go on strike under the guise of they're fighting for better...
ASUU is absolutely wrong.
They are absolutely
Okay,
wrong.
defend them, Prof.
No.
Exactly.
You see,
I've expressed a point of view.
IPPIS, you need to understand it. IPPIS has its merits and demerits when it comes to operational consideration. What the academic community is talking about, let's take one example, that we have the problem of inadequacy of teaching personnel. When a lecturer, for instance, in the University of Lagos is required to assist, say, in Bowen University, he is supposed to be paid. Now,
There are rules governing that. The federal government is saying it's not saying you cannot be paid under that. The Accountant General of the Federation has made that clear.
Yes.
And there are rules.
Yeah.
You get half of your salary. If you go on sabbatical, you still get salary in 2 places. Yeah. You cannot teach in more than 2 universities. And the university must not be farther away than 200 kilometers. So I know the rules.
IPPIS doesn't address those issues. IPPIS is just that, look, all your revenues, whatever you have, should be paid directly into one account. And then whatever you need will be dispensed from there and given to you. Please, I'm making it bold here.
But what do you mean revenues? It's a payment system for personnel. What
Yes, that will be paid. Look, please, my salary as Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs in the month of October 2015 is yet to be paid as of now that I'm telling you. I'm saying this now.
You cannot collect salary in 2 places.
I'm not, I was Director General. I was in service.
It was a full-time job.
But what does that have to do with IPPIS, though?
IPPIS, because the money was paid directly there. Well, by that time, we were registering. When it was not paid on time, I think I'm told of recent that the salary for October was the one paid to me in December 2015, but which I refunded because I left office November 30, 2015, and when my account was credited in December.
But you have not received October salary,
So
so why
why
did you not take it?
No, but by that time it was not given. It was not given as salary.
Okay.
And because of the controversy, the situation there, I normally refunded that one to say.
As my father, you'll have written a note. My October salary was not paid.
But
I received this.
Let me take Chike.
But you see,
Prof, you have declared your personal interest in this matter.
no, but to tell
But let the point be made.
is to let you know that
IPPIS is about transparency and accountability.
I'm not against that.
To eliminate ghost workers.
The fears of the academic is that, look, by the time you will be required to be paid, it may not be forthcoming.
But for me,
so let them address that issue. Let that be the issue that
let me have a word.
Not this autonomy,
please.
not autonomy. Let them address that issue.
And for me, you know, like you rightly said, Ruben, I'm totally with you. IPPIS is for accountability. That is what we need. Then, going to what Yemi also said, we want a situation where we can categorize as citadels of learning. Let us have a Harvard, let us have a Howard. Go to where you can afford and let there be excellence.
Financially autonomous.
Yes. So let it be financially autonomous. And
then they can make their own rules.
Make their own rules. But more importantly, yes, but more importantly, if you are getting any money from the federal government, just like we have our BVNs and all that, it should be thoroughly accounted for and you should go through the IPPIS rules. I totally subscribe to that. Thank you.
Well, Prof, as it is, opinion is divided. But you've been referring to ASUU. ASUU is not the only association in the university system. Yeah. The other groups are not protesting. There is even a group called the Congress of Nigerian Academics. They are not protesting. And that's why, we think that it's a good idea to hold more meetings with ASUU, maybe to explain it properly. And if the concern is about allowances, a template can be worked out for that.
Protesting is enough a reason to consider it.
No, but
IPPIS is good in terms of transparency, etc. all along. The management of IPPIS itself is an issue.
Prof,
so let them address that.
Prof, let
as
them
well.
address. Let ASUU also be clear about that. ASUU cannot hide under the guise of autonomy to talk about issues. So if the system has a glitch or there are issues in terms of prompt payment, let that be raised as a concern. So if money is not paid on time, what are measures? What are recourse? What is our recourse? Do we have 1 week to come to, and then because I read an article where the president was talking about frequent trips to Abuja to clarify it. Let ASUU set up their own process so that people don't have to fly to Abuja. So if there are issues with salaries, you report to ASUU, one person in ASUU goes to Abuja, and then Abuja refunds the cost of us following up this money. That should be the argument, not autonomy.
The debate will continue,
exactly.
I'm sure.
And Ruben, part of all of this is that we have to decentralize governance in Nigeria.
Yes.
This thing, the center is too heavy. That's why we're having all these issues.
Okay, good
Well,
point.
no one is interested in restructuring. That's the issue.
Please leave that word alone.
No, it's part of it.
Let's devolve.
like that word.
We don't like that word. Let's
We
devolve.
have to go now. Thank you very
It's still the
much.
same problem.
We have to go. We'll continue next week. You've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.